In today's video, we're going to tie a small caddis dry fly called the Bloom Caddis. This was developed by Dave Bloom in Montana. First thing we're going to do is start off the Tiemco 100 dry fly hook and some Veevus 14-aught tan thread. Now, the first material we're going to use is going to be some golden pheasant. So I'm just going to take a few fibers here, strip them away from the quill. I want to have about 10 or so fibers. I'm going to tie these in by the tips. I'm going to start my thread about a third of the way back from the eye of the hook. We'll just start by capturing the tips of those feathers, and we'll wrap down the shank of the hook all the way to the bend, and then we'll take our thread forward. And I want to keep my thread at about that 1/3 point away from the eye, or 2/3 forward from the bend of the hook. Then I'm going to take these fibers, I'm going to clip in with a pair of Hackle pliers. I'm going to give them just a few twists just to keep it all in a rope here. Let's try it again. Let's see if I can get them all in my Hackle plier at the same time. There we go. And this is going to give the fly a more even consistency on the body, but it's also going to give it a mottled look. The mottled look is really what we're going after. If you've ever seen a caddis adult, you've noticed that the body of it is kind of mottled color. It's not always uniform. Same with the wings. And that's really the effect that we're going for with this golden pheasant tail. And once I get to my 2/3 spot forward on the hook, I'm going to capture that pheasant tail with several wraps of nice tight wraps. Then we can trim out the excess. And now we're ready for our wing. And for that, I'm just going to use some natural elk hair. You can also use bleach elk hair. Either one does just fine. I'm going to take a small clump. Got to be really careful not to overdo it with the wing on this fly. So I'm just actually going to pull a few fibers out of my clump here. I think I made it a little too thick. There we go. And that's really all you need, about 20 or so fibers. And I put them in a hair stacker and evened up the tips. We're going to tie this in so that it hangs back just past the bend of the hook. I'm going to pinch it in place, give it 2 or 3 loose wraps, and I'm going to just tighten down with my thread. Then I'm actually going to take a couple wraps through a few of those fibers, and this is just going to help keep the wing from rolling from side to side. Then we can get in here and just trim out all those butt ends. Try to trim them fairly flush if you can. Good pair of sharp scissors will let you get in there nice and tight. And I'll just take a couple more wraps through those butt ends just to make sure they're nice and secure. Then I'll just take that wing and I'll draw it up, and we'll lay down a couple more wraps right up against it. That'll kind of help stand that wing up. And if you have any pieces you missed, now's the time to clip them out of there. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to tie in the post. This is going to be some pink parapost wing. So I just take one strand of it out of the package. I'm going to take my thread, I'm going to take it to the halfway point on our head. I'm just going to take 2 wraps to capture it, and then I'm going to take another couple wraps and kind of figure X or figure 8 around our parapost with each of those wraps. And then I'll do it once more, And then you can take a couple wraps in front of it. That'll really lock it down. Now we're going to draw that pair of posts all up. Now before we continue to the next step, we're actually going to take a little bit of wire and just lash down that wing. That wing tends to get in the way and kind of fight you the entire time if you don't lash it down. So I'm just going to take some copper wire, and then I'm just going to wrap it around that wing. You can also use a small clip if you like that technique. The wire seems to be the easiest for me, just because it lays down nice and flush and doesn't get in my way at all. And you can just trim out the excess. Now we're going to take our thread and we're actually just going to wrap around the base of that parapost. We're going to creep our thread up with that parapost. Then I'll lay a few wraps in front of it as well, just to kind of keep it from leaning forward. Kind of create a little bit of a thread wedge or a thread dam. And we'll creep up that post a little bit more. There we are. And now we are ready for our hackle. For that I'm just going to take a dark bar ginger hackle. You can also use brown and grizzly. I'm just going to measure it out so that it reaches back about to the point of the hook. Now we're going to tie this in right in front of our parapost. Then I'm going to draw that feather up with the parapost, and I'm going to creep my thread up the parapost just how I tied the parapost in. Then I'll creep my way back down. We can trim out the butt end of our hackle feather. Now we're ready to dub the head, and for that we're just going to use a little bit of hare's ear or hare's mask dubbing. And just take a little bit, apply it to the hook. You can use a little bit of wax to help keep it all together. And we just want to build a little bit of a head with that dubbing. You got to be real careful you don't overdo it. I apply just a little bit of dubbing to the hook shank, and then I'll add as I kind of need it. It's best not to put it all on all at once. And if you have a few of those guard hairs, you can pluck them out of there. There we are. Now once I have the head all dubbed, I'm just going to let my thread hang right behind that post. And I'm going to pull the parapost away from the hackle. We're ready to wrap our hackle around the parapost. Now I want to creep that hackle down the parapost all the way till I get to the bottom. Then I'm going to pull it towards me, and I'm going to creep my thread underneath all those fibers. Just 2 tight wraps is all you need. Then we can trim out the excess hackle. Now the tricky part here is we're going to whip finish and do the same thing. So I'm going to take my whip finisher, and you're really whip finishing the exact same way as you would on the front of the fly, but you're just doing it underneath the post. And it takes a little bit of practice to master that technique, but when you do, you get these perfect little parachute flies every time. So now we can get in here with my hackle pliers. I'm just going to clip into the piece of wire, and I'm going to unwrap that copper wire. You can fluff up your wing a little bit. Sometimes it gets a little mashed by the wire. Then we can trim our parapost, and if you have troubles seeing your flies, you can leave the parapost fairly tall. If you can see them pretty good and you just need a little bit of help, you can trim it pretty flush. So I'm not going to trim it flush, I'm going to leave it kind of in between. I'm going to trim it just a little bit. That's about all I usually need to see that fly on the water, is just kind of a little 1/8 of an inch of kind of bright pink. And that's all there is to the Bloom Caddis, extremely deadly little fly on the Missouri River. That's where it was developed, but works really everywhere as a small caddis pattern. That is the Bloom Caddis.